The courtroom is silent, only the ticking of a clock echoes across the marble walls. Kody Brown stands at the defense table, his once proud face pale under the cold light. Across from him, Christine's eyes don't blink, not once. What began as a marriage built on faith has now become a criminal trial that could destroy everything. But the most shocking part? It's not about love, it's about what they've been hiding from everyone for years. What happens when the truth behind sister wives finally comes out, under oath? Before we dive in, tell me in the comments, do you think Kody was ever honest with any of them? I'll be reading your theories all episode. The rain came down hard that morning, soaking the courthouse steps and turning the sidewalks into mirrors of chaos. Porters pressed shoulder to shoulder, microphones raised high, their voices a blur of questions and static. The only thing sharper than the wind was the anticipation. Kody Brown, once the patriarch of America's most infamous plural family, was being led into the building in handcuffs. His face was blank, unreadable, but the redness around his eyes hinted at sleepless nights and the storm ahead. Cameras flashed like lightning, capturing every inch of his fall from grace. A man who once preached about unity and love now stood accused of fraud and emotional coercion, crimes that struck right at the heart of the sister wives' family empire. He didn't speak as officers guided him through the doors, but his jaw tightened when he saw Christine waiting inside the courthouse lobby. She wasn't in tears this time. She was still, composed, the kind of quiet that said, "I've already cried enough for you." Inside, the air smelled faintly of disinfectant and coffee. The hum of conversation filled the marble hallways. Court clerks whispered. Lawyers prepared their files. For years, this family's drama had played out in front of cameras, but today there were no producers, no retakes. Just truth, or at least the promise of it. The indictment was heavy. Misuse of joint financial assets, manipulation of shared funds, emotional coercion, and the secret transfer of money meant for the sister wives' trust into private accounts. Prosecutors claimed millions had vanished over a decade, funneled quietly through shell accounts. Christine's name was on some of those transactions, but she insisted she never signed them. And just when you think this couldn't get darker, it does. As the courtroom filled, familiar faces appeared one by one. Janelle entered first, her expression unreadable. She had once been Kody's balance, his calm in the storm, but today her shoulders slumped under invisible weight. Behind her came Mary, looking lost, clutching a folder too tightly to be just paper. And finally, Robyn arrived, the last wife standing. Her hair perfectly brushed, her lips trembling as she avoided everyone's eyes. Cameras outside loved her, the loyal one, the misunderstood, but today even she seemed unsure which version of herself to be. The judge called the court to order. The chatter died instantly. Kody's defense attorney stood beside him, whispering quickly, but his client didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on Christine, who sat across the room, her hands clasped tight. Prosecutor began his opening statement. His voice was low, confident, the kind that didn't just speak facts, it carved them. Ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to hear isn't just a story about money. It's a story about control. About trust turned into a weapon. About a man who built an empire on faith and family, and used both to manipulate the people who loved him most. Christine's breath hitched slightly. For years, she had stayed silent, convincing herself it wasn't her place to question him. But now, her silence had become part of the evidence. Prosecutor continued, detailing how Kody allegedly persuaded the wives to hand over their finances, promising equal security for all. But in reality, the funds were siphoned, invested into ventures only Kody and Robyn knew about. Christine had discovered discrepancies after her separation. First, she thought it was an accounting mistake. Then she found emails that made her blood run cold. Kody shifted in his seat, finally turning to his attorney with a whisper. The defense objected, calling the accusations theatrical. The judge sustained only part of it, reminding both sides this wasn't a TV show. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Porters scribbled frantically, eager to feed headlines. Courtroom was tense, suffocating. Every sigh, every shuffle of paper echoed louder than it should have. Kody's gaze flicked between his wives, past and present, as if still trying to read which of them might turn against him. But the truth doesn't need permission to come out. Finds its way, even in silence. Christine's turn came faster than expected. She was called as the first witness. She hesitated only for a second before standing. Her footsteps across the courtroom floor sounded like the final beats of a long, painful march. She swore the oath with a steady hand. The prosecutor asked gently, "Christine, can you describe your relationship with Mr. Brown at the time these accounts were created?" Her eyes dropped to her lap. "He told me it was for our future. For our family. He said I didn't need to worry about the details, that he'd take care of everything. I trusted him." Kody's jaw tightened. Christine looked up briefly and caught his glare, but she didn't look away this time. "He used that trust," she continued, voice trembling. "Every time I asked about finances, he said I was being ungrateful. That questioning him was questioning God's plan. And I believed him. Until the numbers stopped adding up." A murmur swept through the courtroom. Mary lowered her eyes. Janelle wiped at something on her cheek that wasn't quite a tear. Prosecutor nodded, then held up a document. "Christine, do you recognize this?" She leaned forward. Paper was an authorization form, her signature at the bottom. But she shook her head slowly. "That's not mine." Courtroom erupted in whispers. Even Robyn's hand flew to her mouth. The judge demanded silence. Prosecutor pressed on. "So, you're saying this signature used to transfer $75,000 was forged?" Christine nodded. "Yes. And whoever did it knew exactly how to make it look real." Kody whispered something sharply to his attorney. The man stood, objecting again, calling it speculation. But the prosecutor smiled faintly. "We'll get to the evidence soon enough. Because every lie leaves a fingerprint, and someone's prints are all over this." Hours passed as Christine described years of quiet control. How Kody decided who could buy what when they could travel, how he'd withhold access to funds when anyone questioned him. The audience, mostly reporters and a few diehard fans, sat frozen. This wasn't the family they'd watched for a decade. This was something darker. Then came the twist. Prosecutor pulled a small sealed folder from his briefcase and placed it on the evidence table. "Your Honor, this contains documentation obtained from inside the Brown household. We request to submit it under seal pending authentication." Kody's face drained of color. He leaned toward his lawyer again, whispering fast, panicked. Christine's pulse quickened. Courtroom leaned in as if gravity itself had shifted. "What's in that folder?" the judge asked. Prosecutor didn't smile this time. "Your Honor, these are internal notes, ledgers and correspondence recorded by one of the wives. They detail every transaction, every conversation surrounding the family trust. And they don't match Mr. Brown's statements." Gasps broke through the silence. Christine's heart pounded. She hadn't known anyone else kept records. Kody's eyes darted to Robyn. For the first time all day, her composure cracked. She looked away. The judge ordered the evidence held until the next hearing, but the damage was done. The moment the gavel struck, whispers erupted everywhere. Porters rushed outside, shouting into microphones. The wives scattered, some in tears, some in shock. Kody stayed seated for a long time, staring at the folder as if it contained his entire downfall. His lips moved soundlessly, maybe a prayer or maybe a curse. And just when you think this couldn't get darker, it does. The next morning, the courthouse felt different. Colder. Kind of cold that seeps into your bones, that silence right before something breaks. The storm outside had passed, but the one inside was just beginning. Christine arrived early, her hair pulled back, her face pale but steady. Today, she wasn't here as just a witness. She was the truth teller in a room full of people who'd rather keep everything buried. Porters lined the hallway again, flashes popping like sparks. Everyone wanted to know what was in the sealed folder. No one had answers, and that silence was louder than any headline. When Kody entered, the air shifted. He wore a navy suit that looked too crisp for the occasion, his hands clasped behind him. Robyn walked in moments later, her steps small, her gaze low. She didn't look at him, just straight ahead, as if pretending none of this was real could somehow make it so. Inside the courtroom, the same faces returned. Mary sat near the back, distant, eyes fixed on the judge's bench. Janelle clutched her purse like it held something sacred. No one spoke. You could feel it, every unspoken word, every unfinished fight from years of secrets. The judge entered, and the room rose. "We're reconvening for State versus Brown," he said, voice echoing off the walls. "Prosecution, you may proceed." Prosecutor stood, buttoning his jacket. His tone was calm but surgical. "Your Honor, the state calls Christine Brown back to the stand." Christine rose. Every step she took toward the witness stand felt heavier than the last. As she raised her right hand, the faint tremble in her fingers betrayed her composure. Prosecutor approached gently. "Mrs. Brown, yesterday you stated that Mr. Brown controlled the family's finances and that you were unaware of certain transfers made in your name. Today, we'd like to go deeper into how that control affected you and the other wives." Christine took a deep breath. "It wasn't just about money. It was everything. What we wore, what we said, who we spent time with." He made it seem like faith guided him, but it was always control. Kody's eyes flashed, but he didn't speak. She continued, voice growing steadier. "He told us the family fund was sacred, that we were building something eternal. But when I left, I realized the accounts weren't shared, they were layered. Money was moved, signatures forged. And the moment I started asking questions, that's when everything changed. And just when you think this couldn't get darker, it does." Prosecutor leaned closer. "Changed how?" Christine hesitated. "He'd tell me I was betraying him. That questioning him meant betraying the family. Then came the guilt trips, how I was breaking apart our covenant, how I'd never see the children again if I didn't stop." Her voice cracked slightly, but she pressed on. "That's when I realized it wasn't just control, it was coercion." Courtroom was silent. Even the reporters stopped writing. Kody's lawyer stood, objecting to the emotional phrasing. "Your Honor, this is character testimony, not evidence." But the judge shook his head. "Overruled." "Continue." Christine looked down, exhaling. "I stayed for years because I was scared. Scared of losing everything. Scared of being the reason the family fell apart. But fear shouldn't decide who owns the truth." Prosecutor nodded, letting her words linger. Then he turned to the evidence table and lifted a photograph. "Mrs. Brown, do you recognize this?" Her breath caught. It was a photo of the family ledger, handwritten columns showing income, expenses, and account numbers. At the top, in Kody's handwriting, were 3 letters. RFA. Christine swallowed hard. "Yes. That's the book he kept in his office. Only he and Robyn had access." Prosecutor's tone sharpened. "Mrs. Brown, do you know what RFA stands for?" She nodded slowly. "Robyn's family account." A wave of murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Robyn's face turned red, tears welling up. She shook her head quickly. "That's not true. It's not what you think." Prosecutor turned toward her. "We'll get to you, Mrs. Brown." Christine's eyes softened, but her voice stayed steady. "I wanted to believe it was a family thing. But then I found a statement, money leaving the trust and going into that account. And when I asked him, he told me to pray for faith. To stop letting jealousy poison my heart. Because sometimes the truth isn't hidden, it's disguised as love." The defense lawyer rose quickly. "Objection, this is narrative, not fact." "Sustained," said the judge, but his eyes lingered on Kody. Even he seemed uneasy. Prosecutor continued, pivoting. Mrs. Brown, did you confront anyone else about these discrepancies? Christine nodded. Janelle. I told her what I'd seen. All eyes turned to Janelle in the gallery. Her face flushed as Christine continued. She told me to be careful, that he gets angry when cornered. She said she'd noticed missing funds too, but she didn't want to believe it. The defense objected again, but the damage was done. Janelle stood suddenly, voice shaking. She's right, she said aloud. I didn't want to believe it. None of us did. Gasps filled the room. The judge called for order, but the chaos was already alive. Christine watched Janelle with quiet gratitude. For the first time in years, someone stood beside her. Kody's face turned red, his composure slipping. This is insane, he muttered, voice low but audible. You're all turning on me. Robyn reached for his hand, whispering something that no one could hear. But the cameras caught it, the trembling lips, the desperate eyes. And just when you think the lies have reached their peak, another one cracks open. Prosecutor raised a new piece of evidence. Your Honor, the state requests to introduce Exhibit D, a financial transfer record authorized by both Mr. and Mrs. Brown. Christine's eyes narrowed. I never signed that. Prosecutor nodded. We know, because the handwriting expert concluded it was copied. A heavy silence fell. Robyn's breath hitched audibly. Her hands shook. Christine turned slowly toward her. Robyn, did you sign for me? Robyn's lips parted, but no sound came. Tears filled her eyes, spilling over as she shook her head again and again. I was told to. He said it was temporary. He said it was for taxes, just paperwork. Courtroom broke into chaos. Cameras clicked. The judge slammed his gavel. Order! Order! Kody shouted over the noise. She's lying! She's twisting everything. You think you know the truth, but you don't. Christine's calm never wavered. Then show us, she said softly. Show us your truth. The silence that followed was suffocating. Kody sat down, chest heaving, but his eyes, cold, calculating, never left Christine's face. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear the sound of a kingdom built on secrets starting to crumble. The session stretched for hours. Robyn was escorted out in tears, her statement now part of the record. Mary remained frozen, staring at her hands as if the lines on her palms might explain how everything went so wrong. By the time the judge called recess, Christine looked drained but unbroken. She stepped outside, the cold air hitting her face like a new beginning. Porters swarmed instantly. Christine, did Robyn forge your name? Do you think Kody's guilty? She didn't answer. She just whispered, almost to herself, truth doesn't need a headline. It just needs time. As she turned toward the courthouse steps, a voice called from behind her, familiar, quiet, trembling. Janelle. Christine, there's something else you need to know. Something none of us told you. Christine froze. The world around her blurred. What do you mean? Janelle hesitated, glancing at the cameras, then back at her. That sealed folder from yesterday, the one the prosecutor found? It wasn't the state that discovered it. Christine's breath caught. Then who? Janelle swallowed hard. It came from someone inside the house. Courthouse lights flickered faintly as the day dragged on, the air heavy with something unseen but deeply felt. Courtroom was supposed to feel safe, structured, logical, but now it felt like a confessional booth. Every truth that came out left a scar. Christine sat in the hallway, her hands folded tightly, waiting to be called again. The faint hum of voices carried from nearby rooms, echoing off marble floors. Janelle's words from earlier still looped in her head. It came from someone inside the house. But who? When the doors finally opened, the bailiff's voice broke the silence. All rise. Kody entered first, his face a portrait of defiance. Behind him came Robyn, eyes red, hands trembling, but she wouldn't look at him. Mary lingered near the door, torn between duty and disbelief. Janelle sat close to Christine this time. Quiet unity. Quiet rebellion. Prosecutor began swiftly. Your Honor, the state now introduces testimony regarding the origin of the sealed evidence folder presented yesterday. We have identified the source. All eyes turned toward the back of the room. A figure stepped in, hood up, shoulders squared, nervous but determined. Cameras zoomed in. When the hood came down, a collective gasp echoed across the courtroom. It wasn't a stranger. It was one of Kody's older children. State your name for the record, the prosecutor said. Paydon Brown. Christine's hand went to her mouth. Her son. Paydon took the oath, his voice low but unwavering. I lived in that house for years. I saw things I wish I hadn't. And when I found out Mom was being blamed for things she didn't do, I knew I had to come forward. Kody's jaw tightened. This is absurd, he muttered, but the microphone caught it. And just when you think you've seen every betrayal, another one walks through the door. Prosecutor nodded to Paydon. Mr. Brown, can you explain what's in that folder? Paydon hesitated, glancing at his mother. She nodded faintly, tears building behind her composure. They're notes, he said slowly. Copies of ledgers, receipts, and journal entries. They show that money was moved from the family trust into Robyn's account, money meant for the rest of us. But there's more. Prosecutor gestured for him to continue. Paydon looked directly at Kody. Dad kept a notebook. He'd write everything, plans, deals, instructions for us. And in one entry, he wrote about forging Mom's name. Said it was necessary for order in the family. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Robyn's hands flew to her face. Janelle turned away. Mary started crying silently in the back. Kody stood abruptly, fists clenched. He's lying. He's been poisoned by his mother. The judge slammed the gavel. Sit down, Mr. Brown. But Kody didn't. His voice cracked, anger spilling out. You don't know what it's like trying to keep a family together. They all wanted control. I gave them structure. Christine whispered under her breath. You gave us chains. Sometimes the truth doesn't explode. It bleeds, slow and unstoppable. Paydon continued, unshaken. I didn't come here to destroy anyone. I came because Mom deserves to be free of this. Prosecutor walked closer. Where did you find the documents? In Dad's office, Paydon said. Behind a drawer falseback. I found them months ago after Mom left. I thought they were just notes until I saw her signature on one of the pages. Robyn's face paled. Her eyes darted to Kody, who refused to look at her. The silence between them said everything. Prosecutor took the folder, flipping through the papers. Your Honor, within these are handwritten instructions allegedly from Mr. Brown, directing bank movements under multiple accounts. We have verified the handwriting. Kody's attorney objected, demanding independent verification, but the judge allowed the exhibit into evidence pending review. Christine closed her eyes briefly, exhaling like someone who'd been holding her breath for years. And yet, the deeper you dig for truth, the more you find things you wish had stayed buried. The next witness called was unexpected, Mary. She walked to the stand with shaky steps, every movement heavy with history. Prosecutor softened his tone. Mrs. Brown, you were part of the family trust management at one point, correct? She nodded weakly. Yes. Kody asked me to oversee records sometimes, but only what he wanted me to see. Did you ever question the financial decisions? I tried, she said. But he make me feel guilty. Like I was betraying him. Like I wasn't loyal enough. Kody looked away, jaw tight. Mrs. Brown, the prosecutor said gently, did you ever notice any irregularities in the ledgers? Her voice trembled. Yes. Transfers labeled as maintenance or children's expenses, but they were too high. When I asked, he said it was private. "Don't worry about it, Mary," he'd say. "You wouldn't understand the bigger picture." Mary's lip quivered. "But I did understand. I just didn't want to." Courtroom stayed silent, save for the faint clicking of cameras capturing every emotion. When denial finally breaks, it sounds like a whisper that won't stop echoing. Prosecutor moved to the main table, placing 3 photos on the screen for the jury. "These are the signed transaction slips from the family account. Each one has Christine Brown's name. But when analyzed, they show subtle differences that suggest imitation." Kody's lawyer stood again, voice raised. "Your Honor, this is not definitive evidence of fraud. It's handwriting analysis, hardly conclusive." But the prosecutor was ready. "Then let's hear it from someone who was there." He gestured toward the back. Another witness entered, a former accountant for the family's production company. She adjusted her glasses, looking nervous. "I was told to falsify monthly reports," she said quietly. "By Mr. Brown. He said it was to protect the family's image. But when I refused to sign the financials one quarter, he told me my job depended on faith." Kody's face turned stone cold. "Who told you to change the numbers?" Prosecutor asked. She swallowed. "Mr. Brown and Mrs. Robyn Brown." The room erupted. The judge shouted for silence again. Christine's eyes widened. Robyn stared at the floor, shaking her head, whispering, "No, no, no, and just when you think this couldn't get darker, it does." As the session neared its end, Christine looked around the courtroom. The walls felt smaller now, the air heavier. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting to expose the rot at the core of something that once called itself family. Kody sat motionless, eyes distant. The weight of it all had finally started to show. His empire, his image, his control was crumbling piece by piece under the harsh light of truth. The judge called for a recess, his voice firm. "We'll reconvene tomorrow to review the sealed evidence in full." Christine stood, heart pounding, as reporters surged again. But before she could leave, Robyn reached out, gripping her arm weakly. "Christine, please," she whispered, eyes wet and terrified. "You don't know everything. There's something he made me do, something worse than the signatures." Christine froze. The words hung between them like smoke. "What did he make you do, Robyn?" Robyn's lip trembled, and she glanced toward Kody, who was already staring daggers at her. "I can't say here. Not yet. But if I tell the truth, it'll destroy him completely." The morning light spilled through the tall courthouse windows like something divine trying to touch a corrupted place. The trial had dragged into its 4th day, and the weight of what had already been said was enough to crush anyone who'd lived it. Christine stood near the door before the session began, her reflection barely visible in the glass. Her fingers trembled as she adjusted her blazer, the same one she'd worn on day 1. It had become a kind of armor, familiar, steady, even as everything else cracked apart. Behind her, Janelle murmured something to Mary, but the words didn't matter. The air was heavy with anticipation. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone except Kody. When the bailiff's voice called the room to order, it was Robyn who walked in last. Her face was pale, eyes red, lips trembling, but there was something else. Resolve. Kody tried to meet her gaze, but she looked straight ahead, refusing to acknowledge him. The judge adjusted his glasses. "The state may call its next witness." Prosecutor nodded. "Your Honor, the state calls Robyn Brown." A low murmur spread across the gallery. Cameras zoomed. Journalists leaned forward. Christine's heart started to race. Robyn took the stand slowly, like each step was weighted with years of fear. Her hands shook as she was sworn in. When the prosecutor spoke, his tone was gentler than usual. "Mrs. Brown, you've heard the testimonies of the past few days. You've been mentioned in connection with financial activities tied to the family trust. Do you wish to make a statement?" She swallowed hard. "Yes." The room went silent. Even Kody stopped fidgeting. I didn't want to say anything, Robyn began, her voice barely audible. I thought if I stayed quiet, it would all go away. But it didn't. It got worse. Prosecutor took a step closer. Worse how? Robyn's eyes flickered toward Kody, then back to the prosecutor. Because I did something I can't take back. I forged Christine's name. Gasps exploded across the courtroom. Kody's jaw dropped open. Christine's eyes went wide, frozen. Robyn wiped at her tears. He told me to do it. He said Christine was being disobedient, that she didn't understand how family finances worked. He said if I wanted to prove I was loyal, if I wanted to keep our marriage strong, I had to help him. Kody slammed his hands on the table. That's a lie. Sit down, Mr. Brown, the judge barked. But Robyn kept talking, her voice growing steadier. He said it was just paperwork. That Christine would never find out. But later, when the checks cleared, I realized what it was really about. It wasn't about order or faith or family. It was about control. Christine felt her throat tighten. Every word landed like a stone in her chest. And just when you think the truth can't cut deeper, it draws blood. Prosecutor approached gently. Mrs. Brown, why are you telling us this now? Robyn hesitated. Her voice cracked. Because I can't sleep anymore. 'Cause I see her face every time I close my eyes. Because he said if I ever talked, he'd ruin me too. Kody leaned forward, his voice cold and sharp. You think you can turn on me now, Robyn? After everything I did for you? She flinched, tears spilling again. You didn't do it for me. You did it for yourself. For your ego. The judge slammed the gavel again. Order! Christine could feel the shift happening in real time, the energy in the room turning, the power dynamic flipping. For years, Robyn had been Kody's shield. Now she was dismantling him one sentence at a time. Prosecutor handed her a document. Is this one of the forged signatures you were instructed to produce? Robyn nodded, her hand trembling as she pointed to a line on the paper. Yes, that one. I copied her signature from a birthday card she once gave me. Christine closed her eyes. That tiny detail, so human, so cruel, broke something inside her. Sometimes the weapon isn't a lie, it's the memory it hides behind. The defense attorney stood, desperate to regain control. Mrs. Brown, you admit to a crime here. You forged a legal document. Are you expecting leniency for this so-called confession? Robyn's voice steadied again. I don't care what happens to me. I care that my kids don't grow up thinking lies are love. Silence filled the room. Even the reporters stopped typing. Then, softly, Christine whispered, Why now, Robyn? Robyn looked at her, tears streaking her face. Because you were right. You said once that real love doesn't need control, it needs truth. And I never understood what that meant until I saw what I'd become. For the first time, Christine didn't see a rival. She saw a woman trapped, just like she once was. And just when you think redemption is impossible, someone dares to reach for it. The prosecutor rested his hands on the table. Mrs. Brown, did Mr. Brown ever threaten anyone else to maintain silence? Robyn hesitated, then nodded. Yes. He told Janelle if she ever sided with Christine, he'd cut her off financially. Told Mary that her spiritual marriage would be revoked if she questioned him again. Janelle looked down, tears glistening in her eyes. Mary covered her face with her hands. The judge exhaled slowly. We'll take a 15-minute recess before proceeding. When the gavel hit, the spell broke. Kody turned sharply to Robyn, voice low and venomous. You think you've saved yourself? You've doomed us all. Robyn didn't flinch. No, Kody. You did that the moment you started confusing faith with fear. Christine stepped forward, her voice steady. He's not the man we thought he was. He never was. Kody turned his glare toward her. You think this makes you better than me? No, she said softly. It just makes me free. And just when you think the story has reached its breaking point, it finds another heartbeat. As Robyn was escorted off the stand, she looked back one last time. I'll testify again tomorrow, she whispered. There's more. Things you don't know yet. About the money and the recordings. Christine froze. Recordings? Robyn nodded once, her eyes haunted. He kept everything. Every conversation. Every deal. Every lie. And just like that, the entire courtroom shifted again. The walls seemed to close in. A new shadow fell over everything they thought they knew. Because now this wasn't just a trial. It was the unraveling of an empire. Courthouse feels different today. Quieter. Colder. The air doesn't buzz with gossip anymore, it hums with dread. Kody sits at the defense table, but he isn't the same man who once commanded a family, a show, and a small empire built on faith. His hands are clasped, his knuckles white, and for the first time he looks like he doesn't believe in anything at all. Across from him, Christine adjusts a folder, her eyes steady but tired. Janelle is beside her, arms folded, face unreadable. Mary sits 2 rows behind, staring straight ahead like she's watching the ghost of her old life on trial. The judge's gavel cracks through the silence. We are back in session. The jury will continue deliberations. Both parties are reminded that additional testimony may be heard before closing arguments. Prosecutor rises. Your Honor, before the jury is dismissed, the state would like to recall Mrs. Christine Brown for one final statement. Christine's breath catches. She hadn't expected that. Neither had Kody. He looks up sharply. What could she possibly have left to say? The judge nods. Proceed. Christine stands slowly. Her heels click softly against the polished floor. Courtroom lights feel too bright, too exposing. As she takes the stand, a murmur ripples through the audience, reporters, viewers, and fans who once adored their show, now staring at the ruins of a family. She folds her hands together, looks down for a moment, and then meets the prosecutor's eyes. Mrs. Brown, he says gently, you've already testified about the finances, about the manipulation. What brings you back today? Christine exhales. Because I never told you why I came forward. Why now? After all these years. Kody leans back, a smirk flickering on his face. Oh, this should be good. But Christine doesn't look at him. She looks at the jury. When you live in a world where silence is loyalty, she begins, you start believing that speaking up makes you the villain. You tell yourself you're protecting your family, your faith, your husband. But really, you're protecting the lie that's protecting him. Courtroom stays perfectly still. She continues, voice trembling but resolute. For years, I thought keeping peace was worth any price. Even my own truth. But one day, that price came due. And just when you think she's said everything, she says what no one saw coming. Christine reaches into her folder and pulls out a small, battered flash drive. The bailiff steps forward, taking it to the prosecutor. This, she says, is what made me come forward. Prosecutor nods to the technician, who plugs it into the courtroom screen. The video flickers to life, grainy, time-stamped footage from years ago. It's the living room of the Brown household. Kody sits in his chair, arms crossed, talking to Robyn in a low, commanding tone. Christine's recorded voice echoes faintly from somewhere off-camera. Kody, please, don't do this. You can't take from the others like that. He laughs coldly. They'll never know. You think any of them read the paperwork? You think they'd leave if they did? Robyn's voice whispers nervously. What if Christine finds out? She won't, Kody snaps. And even if she does, she won't have the guts to tell anyone. The video ends. Silence. Every juror is frozen. Robyn buries her face in her hands. Kody's smirk vanishes. Christine's eyes glisten, but her voice stays calm. That's why I came forward. 'Cause he was right. I didn't have the guts then. But I do now. Prosecutor's tone softens. Mrs. Brown, when did you find this recording? 2 months ago, she says. It was saved on an old laptop my son found while cleaning the garage. I watched it 3 times. I couldn't stop shaking. The defense attorney rises, grasping for control. Your Honor, this is inadmissible. But the judge raises a hand. The court will decide admissibility after review. For now, continue. Christine turns back to the jury. You've heard the money stories. You've heard the lies. But I need you to know this isn't just about numbers. It's about what happens when someone uses love as leverage. When faith becomes fear. When a husband becomes a warden. Her voice breaks on the last word, but she doesn't cry. Not yet. And just when you think the silence will hold, it shatters like glass. Kody slams his hand on the table. You're twisting everything. You all wanted the fame, the cameras, the money. Don't act like I forced you. Christine looks at him calmly. You didn't force me to love you, Kody. You forced me to forget who I was. The judge bangs the gavel again. Order. Mr. Brown, you will control yourself or be removed. Kody sinks back, chest heaving, eyes wild. Prosecutor nods to Christine. Thank you, Mrs. Brown. You may step down. But Christine doesn't move. She takes one last breath. There's one more thing, she says softly. The judge sighs. Briefly. She turns toward Kody, her expression unreadable. You said no one would believe me. But here they are, listening. And for the first time since the trial began, Kody looks small. Not angry. Just small. Christine finally sits. Courtroom exhales collectively. The judge calls for recess. The jury files out. Prosecutor gathers papers. But in the quiet that follows, something unspoken hangs in the air, something that feels final, even before the verdict. Because sometimes the verdict isn't what the court decides, it's what the truth already did. As Christine stands to leave, Robyn approaches her. Her face is red, swollen, but her voice is soft. Christine, thank you. You did what I couldn't. Christine pauses. You told the truth too. Robyn shakes her head. Not all of it. Christine's eyes widen slightly. What do you mean? Robyn hesitates, glancing toward the empty jury box. There's something else. Something I didn't tell the court. About where the rest of the money went. Before Christine can speak, the bailiff's voice calls out. All parties, court resumes in 10 minutes. Robyn leans in close, whispering, Meet me after the verdict. I'll show you. And then she walks away. And just when you think the end is near, another secret steps into the light. The jury begins to file back in, faces tense, verdict forms in hand. The entire courtroom goes still again. But Christine isn't watching the jurors. She's watching Robyn. Because she knows whatever comes next, the real story isn't over. Not even close.